you tell us your name? And we invited our friend Al Luna from Paranormal Spirit Encounter Investigations to be our special guest for this portion of the show, even though he's our guest for the whole portion. But just a little background. You've heard me mention before that Kent, Tim, Andrea, and even Al way over there were involved in a organization several years ago called Spirit Expeditions. And we all, well, some of us had a tour. Kent was in the home office. Kent didn't have a tour.
In fact, Kent interviewed me to hire me.
Really?
So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, he did a good
sorry,
job.
Al.
Me too.
Right, Kent, it was all your fault.
Well, so Kent is basically to blame for all of this, folks. But well, I mean, when Spirit Expeditions broke up, we all stayed friends, and Tim and I went on and continued doing the tours. Tim is still doing the tours, and what you're watching today evolved out of our tours that Lynn and I were doing here in Mobile. Al already had Paranormal Spirit Encounter Investigations. Am I correct, Al?
I believe I was with another team at that time.
Okay. But he was investigating. Yeah, and he came on as one of the tour guides, and we all got to be friends there. And I've always called him the Big Kahuna or Big Al. And I've always respected him and appreciate him being here with us today. So tell us a little bit about how you got started and how you started PSEI.
Well, my wife and I, we were one of those couples that like to sit and watch the shows on TV. And one day I looked over at her. I said, "Hey, would you like to give that a try?" She said, "Yeah, I'd be interested."
Yeah,
so
sure.
We started contacting teams in the area, and one of them took us on. We were with them for about 3 years. And while we were with them, the more we were investigating and finding things in people's homes and, giving them evidence and everything, I'm thinking, well, are they doing anything to help these people? Because after the investigation was done, we were out of it. So I asked the founders, I said, well, are you cleansing their house, blessing their house? Are you doing anything to help get rid of anything negative that we're coming across? And they said, no, we try to pass their information on to other teams that will help them, and we don't really know what happens from there. So that kind of upset me. In the meantime, I had taken a job where I was managing a store, and I had a Roman Catholic priest that came in fairly regular, and I got to know him pretty well. And he told me one day, he said, "Al," he said, "if you ever go into a home and there's some really bad things going on and you need an exorcism, please contact me." And I had his phone number and everything, and I thought, maybe it's time for us to branch off. So we started our own team, and within a month of the time that we started our team, I had given my card to a girl in a Taco Bell. And, she said, "Wow, you do this." She said, "We just had the dead files in our home in Toledo." And Amy told us that we had 3 demons in our house. Can you help us? I said, yeah, I believe we can. So her mother called me soon after. I had the Roman Catholic priest come down and work with us. We did a full-fledged exorcism in the home. One of the owners of the home was attacked during the exorcism, and I was also.
Oh, wow.
And we fought that off and got through it. We got rid of what was in the home, and they've been fine ever since.
Wow.
So we've continued forward from there, and our main goal from the start has been to help people that are having negative things going on. Not to say that we don't help people to figure out if mom and dad are there with them, or cousin Fred or Aunt Ethel, or whatever the situation. We like to do those fun investigations because that just, gives us something to do, something to practice and whatnot.
Yeah.
But we do get called often for those negative things.
Right.
And I have actually taken over doing the exorcisms myself. I will do something as simple as a cleansing or blessing if that's all the folks feel they need.
Right.
It all depends on the client and what their desire is.
Sure. Well, and we need to say hello to Donnie. He was finally able to make it, and we're glad you're back with us, Donnie.
Thank you,
Donnie,
buddy.
meet Al, meet Kent. I don't think you were here with us, Kent, last time.
No.
That's Donnie, one of our ETs. He's had some issues the last couple of weeks, and but he's back with us, and we're glad he's here. Everybody say hey.
Hey, Donnie.
Hey, thank you guys
Welcome
so
back,
much
Donnie.
for having me today.
Well, we're glad you can finally be with us. Glad you are, man. All right, Al, what was the very first paranormal experience that you can say that you had?
A first experience, I believe, was when I was growing up. The house that I was in, there was definitely something in there. It primarily stayed in the attic. It was one of those situations where we had a dormer in the upstairs, so it was 2 rooms with just a hallway in between. And the entrance to the attic was right in my room. Wow. And I would get knocking on the little door to it, and I'd hear things walking around back in the attic, and
wow,
slept with the covers over my head many nights.
Well, what would you say your most profound experience since you've been doing this?
My most profound experience, I would have to say, took place in Gettysburg.
Wow.
We took a trip to Gettysburg. We took the whole team there one year. But the time that I had my best experience was when it was just me and my wife. And we investigated with a group. And we were put in a field hospital from the Civil War, from that battle.
Yeah.
And I did a little play myself. And I acted like a wounded soldier, and my wife, had an old shawl on, and she acted as a nurse. And this happened on July 6th, which was 3 days after the 150th anniversary of the battle.
Wow.
And as I laid on the floor in the field hospital, right in the space where they did the operating, it was over 90 degrees in the house still at that time. It was after midnight, I know. And I was sweating, of course, but as I was laying there, it got worse and worse. And then all of a sudden I started freezing up and down both sides of me.
Wow.
And just so happened that one of the girls that was investigating, they had given her a thermal camera. And she came into the room and she was pointing it over my way. And she asked my wife, she said, well, what's that red thing right in the middle? And she said, that's his body heat. She said, well, what is the blue that's fluctuating going up and down his side? She said, that's the people that are trying to help him. And I mean, I started to get sick to my stomach. I wanted to vomit. It was so bad. So I asked him to help sit me up. And once I sat up, and when my wife grabbed my arm, She said, "You are so cold and clammy. How can you be this, with it being so hot in here?"
Wow.
I said, "No, they're all around me." Well, the girl with the thermal camera went behind me and was still pointing it at me. And the guy that was doing some video for us said, "Al, you're not going to believe this. You have a blue handprint right on your back."
Holy
And
cow.
I said, "I can feel it." Well, they helped me up, and it was about 6 steps to the front door. Once I got outside, I took 3 deep breaths and felt like nothing ever happened.
Wow.
It was just amazing.
That is cool.
Yeah, I definitely had the doctors and the nurses surrounding me, trying to help me.
Well, did they get pictures or video of this?
The thermal camera was just one that showed what it was looking at the time. It didn't record or video.
It didn't record. Crap.
It was personal experience, and everyone that was around us had the experience of seeing what I went through.
Wow. Well, I mean, it's still cool to hear. I mean, that's an amazing story. I love it. It would be nice to have at least a thermal image. That would have been cool. Well, now I've just written down some things here, Al. Just some steps to go through. There's not necessarily any specific order, but we want to hear from you. I mean, just some things that you go through to set up an investigation and get into an investigation. I mean, I just wrote some thoughts down of scouting, which basically checking over the area, setting the team, who should or should not be on the team, planning the investigation, set up at the time of the investigation, who does what when, is it going to be formal and structured, loose or informal, and investigating after dark. We can go through some of these here real quick. But what's the first thing you do when you get to a location?
Well, number one, as I told you before, we go do an interview.
Right.
So when we do this interview, we find out as much information as we can besides our background research. We get as much from the client as we can. We find out where the activity is in their home or even in their business. As I'm going around, I'm figuring out in my head, where do I want to place the IR cameras? Where do we want to focus? How many people am I going to need to do the sessions? We figure out our time that we're going to start. And we involve the clients. One of the most important things to us is we're there to make the client happy and comfortable in their home. So if they're involved in the investigation, they're going to understand a little better what's there, who's there, and if they really mean them any harm or anything. And for the most part, I haven't had to do anything to get rid of entities because they discover they're friends. They may have lived there previously, or it actually could be a relative, and they don't want them to leave then. But we do set up ground rules after the fact, to let the entity know, look, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. Please live in harmony with the folks here, and we won't have to come back.
Exactly. So what do you do as far as when it comes time to investigate on site?
When we're ready to investigate, I have forms that I use, and I fill these out. I know who's investigating, who's going to be there. I know the rooms, the areas that we're going to be in. So I set up my sessions and who's going to be where. And I always split people up through each session so that we find that right combination that the entities are going to want to communicate with. It's not always going to be the same 2 people.
Right.
For our cameras, we actually have a form, so whoever's watching the monitors, they'll be able to write down, what camera they were seeing things happen on, what the time is, so that we can go back and take a look at it if we need to. The vast majority of the time, what they're writing down is orbs. When we have the clients at the monitors, they're writing down dust, but they put orbs.
Right. Like you sent me some pictures here.
Yeah.
Uh,
This is actually at an opera house, not too far from the Toledo area. You can see, what we deem as orbs. Those are not specks of dust. In the next picture, you'll actually see that bright one has moved off stage now. And we had a lot of activity on the equipment that night. They were pretty active for us. This is taken at an old building downtown, built in 1895. And this building is awesome. The woodwork and everything in there is holding so much energy from the past. And there are intelligent entities in there. I had a group down in the basement of this building, which is now a locker room. And a girl was sitting on the bench. One of my team members was just behind her a little ways. And her ponytail lifted up and dropped down. And no one was near her.
wow.
The girl that happened to, she actually worked there, and she's had things happen to her like that before. So it wasn't a shock to her.
Yeah.
But it was pretty cool for my people to be able to see that.
Yeah. All right. What about this? Where'd it go? This video.
Okay, this video was actually taken in a home that we were investigating. The homeowner, one of the homeowners, is now a member of my team. I've had many of my past clients join my team because they want to pay it forward.
Yeah.
There were actually 3 parents that passed away in this house. Before we started the investigation, Bob, our psychic medium, told us that something was going to happen back in these rooms. This was Linda's office area. So we had investigated all night. Nothing big happened back in that room.
Yeah.
We were all sitting around the monitor talking about different things that did happen through the night. And all of a sudden, this thing fell out of the ceiling and floated through the room. And just, we're all running in, we're taking pictures, we got recorders going. We got nothing else, but we believe that that was her mother's way of showing her that she was there with them.
Okay. To play devil's advocate here. That wasn't a June bug
No.
or a moth.
If you take that video and you stop frame it as you're going through, when it first shows up, you can see 6 circles connecting together, forming this.
Wow.
As it goes through, you see it gets brighter. All of those circles fill in. So it's just a really neat experience.
Not to be irreverent, but it looks like the Aerosmith logo took flight. That's I like it. I mean, I'm not.
Like I said, if you stop it right when it hits the camera, there's hardly any light to it at all. And then it just starts filling in.
I wish I had that kind of video control in this in StreamYard, but it doesn't give me that. But
see how it gets brighter?
Yeah, that is just. I think it's cool. I like it.
A lot of people. I had people from Australia sending me messages saying that was a moth.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in that home. We searched for any kind of insect.
Right.
And if you think about it and you look at the size of it, that thing would have been as wide as my face, if not even wider.
Oh, let me see.
It makes me think of a dove, the way a dove flies in before it goes and lands.
And an interesting thing is there was another team in the Toledo area that did a video up in an attic, and he got something very similar to that. Across the attic.
Yeah, when I go back and look at it, that thing had to. Yeah, it's huge. It's much bigger than a moth.
Yeah. I mean, it's wider than the door frame.
Wow.
You'd also be seeing wing movement there, and you're not seeing any movement. That thing stays pretty solid and gets brighter as it goes through, which
Yeah,
is
there's
really
no
cool.
wing flapping. There's no nothing. It's
Right.
just a solid entity.
That is cool. That's amazing. All right. When you do your investigation, we may go back and watch that again. That's just, I like it. When you do your actual investigation and you've got people divided up into teams like that, is it, which I love your forms, by the way. I used to have one with a team I was on that I made up, and it would have, it was for the individual investigator where you would, make your reports on what happened during the investigation. But when you're actually doing the investigation, is it formal where you have, certain guidelines that you do every time, or is it kind of loose and informal?
We don't get real formal with it. Once people get to the area where I've assigned them to, then the lights are out, equipment's on, and we're just doing EVP sessions and trying to get them to communicate either through voice or through the equipment.
Mm-hmm.
I've had sessions where once they start lighting up a piece of equipment and I can get them to understand, light this up for me to say yes and leave it alone if it's a no, I'll start getting responses from direct questions.
Right.
And that's how we try to work with them. Of course, we do have, your standard issue ghost box, and we have different various forms of this.
Right.
So we're trying to get that direct voice from them, but
Right.
those are kind of rare. You're not going to get those that often.
Yeah, and you bring up a point too that everybody's waving. I don't know what's going on.
Christina's saying goodbye. She's got to go.
You got to go. I'm so sorry.
I had something come up. I got to go.
All right. Well, be careful. Thank you for being here. Everybody
Nice
say
to
bye
meet
to
you.
Christine.
We'll see you later.
Bye,
hon.
Christine. Bye.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point where you talk about those vocalizations being rare. And Kent touched on this several times last time we talked about this, is actual experiences and manifestations are rare in a sense compared to the amount of time that you're there. Because I know I'm going to share a story here in a minute where we were in this restaurant one night and nothing happened. We were there for 4, 5, 6 hours. I don't remember, but nothing. Nothing on the recordings, nothing on video, nothing on camera. And we're like, okay. And so we go back the next night and it was just like boom, 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 boom. You just never know. But you've run into that, I'm sure.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's not uncommon at all. And it's really tough when you're going into a home because you're just doing it one time. It's a hit and miss thing.
Yes.
So that's the reason that I'm always trying to mix people up, find those ones that will get the entities to come out. And like I said, our clients investigate with us.
Right.
They're the ones that they're comfortable with. They're going to come out for them more than they are for us.
Exactly. Well, Kent, is that kind of how y'all handle it? You would, plan everything, and then, but when it came down to it, you're kind of informal in the way you actually walked it out.
Yeah, I mean, kind of in the same set. Like we would set up in different rooms, and if it wasn't like we usually gave it about half hour, 45 minutes, and if we weren't getting much activity, we'd kind of switch it up and. You're going to find that, like I was saying, that entity is going to find that particular person that it feels comfortable with.
Good point.
I mean, that's just how I look at it. So I may not get anything in this room, but move to the next room and the person moves over and now it's just going crazy. I mean, you don't know until it actually happens.
Right. I mean, that's a good point. Whatever entities you're dealing with there may not be comfortable with somebody on the team,
Yeah.
or may be more comfortable with somebody else. I mean, I've seen that on teams where, it's like it's different every investigation, where one person seems to get all the attraction, and then another investigation, somebody else gets all the attraction. So,
I have a few team members that are very sensitive, so they're going to pick up on who's there right away when they walk into a room, and
exactly.
they will attract them quicker than a lot of others.
Yeah.
They want someone that they can communicate with and through.
Exactly. All right, you touched on this earlier. Let's take just a minute and talk about EVP sessions, and I'm going to share a couple that I've mentioned before. Al, what's your thoughts on EVP sessions?
Well, EVP sessions to me are extremely important because now you're trying to communicate with who's there.
Mm-hmm.
You're asking questions, you're trying to get on their level. We try to ask a wide variety of questions so that it will spark something, it'll spark a response.
Right.
So to me, doing an EVP session is truly what's going to get you anything.
Yeah. Now, just brought up a thought, and I heard somebody talk about it on a podcast the other day. Digital or analog, like an old tape cassette recorder, which do you prefer?
I go digital.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kent, what's your thoughts on EVP sessions?
I agree. They are very, very important. Like I had mentioned previously, the amount of energy it takes for inferior to speak or manifest, that's what I mean. So if you can catch that, you got to think about it in the aspect of how long that took them to build up that energy. When I do an EVP session, though, it's very clear, concise, and to the point of anybody asking questions. I ask, do not whisper. Give breaks in between your questions, and just make it short. No yes or no questions. I need questions that are going to give me details, so that way I can prove that it's not a human over here whispering.
Yeah, that makes sense. and we talked about this last time. Something that I started doing several years ago when it comes to EVP sessions is I keep them short. When I first started, I would just turn on the recorder and let it run the whole time we were investigating. And then when it came time for review, you got 6 hours of audio, and it's so you got all this thing of moving between room and room, and investigators talking amongst themselves, and a lot of extraneous noise that you don't need when you're reviewing.
One of the things we do, Tom, is just like Kent said, I agree with him totally. We do half-hour to 45-minute sessions,
Mm-hmm.
and then we take a break in between, and
Right.
we've got snacks, and we talk about what happened during that session.
Sure.
And we do live updates during our investigation. So we're typing this all into Facebook, and I'll do live videos and talk about what's happening,
Which we've shared some of those.
And they get on the video with me and say what happened to them during their sessions. And this way we kind of get all that out of our systems right then, and we're ready to go into the next session clean.
Right.
Right. Now we want to start over, and this could be a different scenario. It could be a different entity that we're communicating with. So
That's true.
We've got to be fresh. So
Exactly. And like I said, I started cutting all that out. And so I may go a couple of minutes on an EVP session. But like Kent said, you don't just ramble off a bunch of questions. You ask a question and you wait 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, and then you ask another question. Give someone time to respond. I mean, if you're carrying on a conversation, you're not going to do that to your friends. I mean, if we're on here, I don't ask a question and then ask the next question and then ask the next question and expect Al to be answering these questions all at the same time. I ask a question and wait for a response. Now, we've mentioned before that we investigated the Kennedy house downtown, and Lynn has talked about her experience here. And we had the recorder going, and I went through and found these two EVPs, which, to clarify, most of you know this already, but EVP means electronic voice phenomena. Now, just because you turn on your recorder does not mean that you have an EVP. Just because you have an EVP session does not mean that you have an EVP. You have to go through the recording and find if you have maybe an EVP. And sometimes it takes a while to figure it out. But this is one that we got during that session. See what you think. I'm going to play it again. Turn up your volume. See what you hear. I played it twice. What do you think?
It sounds like Allah.
Well, here's the unique thing. The building we were in had been during the 1860s, I believe, what was called a Seaman's Bethel. It was about a mile from the docks, and it was a place where sailors could come get their 3 hots and a cot, like kind of like jail, but they'd get a place to sleep and food. So there had been sailors there from around the world at one point in that building. So it kind of made sense that we would get something like that. And here's the other one. Now, to me, it sounded like a foreign dialect, Middle Eastern or something.
Yeah.
I mean,
it wasn't clear.
No, it's not clear as far as what is being said or actual words, but to me, it has a dialect feel and sound to it. I'll play it again. What else can you tell?
To me, it sounds Italian.
Could be.
Yeah.
And
and even speaking of that, not to go away from your EVP, we did an investigation up in Michigan, and we were out on railroad tracks part of the time because there was a railroad train crash on this train track right there just down the road from the home we were investigating. And there were many, we don't know the exact count because they didn't take good records back in 1901. But we know that there were at least 100 Italian immigrants that were going from New York to Colorado to the mines.
Yeah.
And when we went out the first night and investigated there, I actually captured 2 Italian men talking to each other on the tracks. It was in Italian. I played it to everyone that was there that night, and everyone heard it. The next morning, I went to download it on my computer. The voices were gone. And that just blew our minds. That is the craziest thing I've had happen as far as with a recording.
Wow, that is wild.
And I wish I'd sent you a couple of the EVPs that I do have in that same house where that video was taken of the enemy coming down. Linda, my investigator, she was our client at that time. We had her and I had two of my team members in the living room with her, and she asked if her dad was one of them there with her, and you heard this voice, and it shocked all of them, and they couldn't tell for sure what was said. But when they came back and we played, you heard a distinct, and it was her dad's voice. You're muted.
Me?
Yeah, I'm still muted, but we're getting an audio loop somewhere.
Yeah.
Everybody make sure they're muted. All right. So she heard her dad's voice?
Yeah, she heard her dad's voice. She had a tear in her eye when she heard that voice come across. She said, "That was my dad."
Oh, that is so cool. Was it Tim or Kent? Hold on. Yeah, was it Tim or Kent last time that said that they expect their grandfather or somebody to show up every time? Or had shown up every time? Am I remembering that correctly? All right. Well, okay. Let's see. Al, you had sent us a couple more pictures. Tell us about this one real quick.
Okay, this picture was actually taken in Gettysburg.
Oh,
we
cool.
were driving around the battlefield at night, and you're not supposed to be in the battlefield, of course. They said as long as you didn't get out of your car, you wouldn't get pulled over, you wouldn't get fined. So we start taking pictures. This was one where you see the orb right over the monument, and that stood out great. I mean, we have some that just have a lot of orbs, but I don't like to put a lot of those out. One unique thing that happened that night also was we pulled up right next to some woods, and I yelled out the window for the men to muster, that we were ready to go to battle. And this was in the late fall. And you could hear the leaves cracking and twigs cracking from the footsteps. And we were flashing lights. We were taking pictures. There were no animals, nothing around. And these guys were lining up in formation for me.
That is amazing. All right. And this next one?
Another one from the battlefield. That's pretty close to the area where we were hearing all of them running through the woods.
Tom, you're muted.
Like yeah, I realized that. I'm pulling an Andrea. You see my lips moving and nothing comes out. All right.
Sorry.
As we wind this down, I just wanted to point out most investigations are at night in the dark. Al, what's your thoughts on why we mostly investigate at night in the dark?
Well, I've done a lot of presentations, and that's one of the questions a lot of people ask. And my best response is okay, number one, you don't want to investigate during the day so much because you've got all of the normal daytime noise around you. You've got traffic, you've got people outside talking, you have planes flying over, you could pick up hundreds of different noises on your recorders trying to investigate during the day. So nighttime is definitely the best time. you don't have all those normal daytime noises. Plus, it's a lot of fun to sit in a really dark room and scare the shit out of each other.
Exactly. All right, Kent, what are your thoughts on nighttime investigation?
I agree with Al. My philosophy on that, and my philosophy is it's easier for them to hide when there's no light, rather than the sunlight or whatever blasting them all that attention. At night, there's more shadows for them to kind of hide, you know. That's just my philosophy.
You know, one other reason that we prefer night also, and this is in talking with my psychic medium for the team, he's proven to me time and time again that entities can draw energy from the moon better than they can from anything else. They will actually use that moonlight as their recharge, and we get a lot more activity, especially on clear nights.
You know, that is exactly what I've explained to folks before, like being on our tours. You know, there you can investigate during the day. It's just that when things quiet down and everything gets still, for the most part, that happens at night. We've investigated during the day and time again get evidence, but it's just a lot less happening at night, and you get a lot more results. I'm going to go to one of our other sponsors before we start closing this down. Here's 1313 Mockingbird Lane. All right. So go check them out. And before we get to our final thoughts, and Al, where'd you disappear to? We had a comment. Ask Al about the train tracks.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to show you some of the equipment there.
Oh, cool.
I actually have a piece going off right now.
Excellent. Something's happening.
I'm going to turn this light out.
Before we get to the train tracks, what was it, last show or the previous show, where my hands were up here and one of the videos started playing by itself? Y'all remember that? I was holding my notes like this, and one of the videos just started by itself. So
Nice.
it can happen. All right, Al, what's the deal about the train?
Okay. The reason that we investigated the tracks in the first place is because the lady that lived in this home, her home was actually the original schoolhouse in this area. And when the train wreck happened, which had happened on Thanksgiving Eve, her house at that time was the school, and it was used as a triage for all the people that they were pulling off the train. So she had activity there still from that train crash, from those people that had nowhere else to go. And she had seen full body entities roaming through her house. So we knew we needed to go up to the tracks first and try to help anyone that wanted to cross over that had not or been afraid to. So we've been up there 3 different times, and every time we go up to the tracks and we want to help them to go on and be with their relatives, not sit back and hang out at the tracks all the time.
I got to
Andrea, I like
unmute
that
my
mug.
mic. I was fixing to say, Andrea's sporting her PSEI mug. All right, before we get to our final sponsor, let's see, and we're going to be getting some closing thoughts here from everybody. Y'all make sure I don't forget anybody this time, okay? I forgot a couple people last time. We're going to actually go to our final sponsor. Then we're going to hit our closing thoughts and close out the Grave Hunter Society, which I said before is the other way, Andrea and her husband John. So go check it out, gravehuntersociety.com. Now we're going to close out today with just some closing thoughts, suppositions. Kent, what's your final thoughts that you want to relay to everybody on research and investigation before we close out today?
Do your due diligence. You can't expect your client to know everything about the history of their property, and they're calling you for help. They don't want to have to do your job for you. That's why we do what we do, is to do the research, to find the answers, and to give them the answers. If you expect them to do it all for you, then what's the point of you even doing it? That's my final thoughts on the research aspect.
All right, cool. Al, final thoughts today.
Final thoughts would be, if you are excited about ghost hunting and you just want experiences, then go to the places that are public. Go to the Mansfield Reformatory, go to, forts in the area, go places where you may have to pay a few dollars, but you can get those experiences. You may see something, feel something someday. But, I beg the teams that are just out for the excitement, don't go into people's homes. Don't frighten them. Don't stir things up and make it worse for them.
That's good. I'm so glad you brought that up. That makes a lot of sense, and people need to remember that. All right, Lynn, final thoughts?
Here, but y'all answered them.
We didn't hear after that. You were muted.
Oh, not really. I had some questions earlier, but then they all got answered.
Okay. All right. Tim, final thoughts?
If you're just starting out, certainly look to see if there are any groups in your area that will allow you to come out and investigate with them. Even if you're just starting out too, Al mentioned going to places that are public. Be aware though if you're supposed to be there or not. You definitely get some permission to be on that property before you're there. They don't want people in places where you're not supposed to be.
Exactly. Donnie, final thoughts? Okay, let's get him unmuted. Okay,
let's
you're
unmute
unmuted now.
Al, are orbs, are they spiritual entities? My parents went to they were buried at a Civil War cemetery. And me and my ex-wife went by there one night. We went in with the camera and the camera just died. Well, when we got out and started to pull, I said, hold on just a second. So she made pictures and there were thousands of orbs around us.
Well, I know that a lot of people don't put a lot into orbs themselves, but I have been able to capture orbs on pictures right next to pieces of equipment that are going off. We've been able to find faces in orbs. They're generally around when we're getting activity.
Yeah, and like we said before, they can be controversial. There are some that's obvious, and I know Al knows this, that are just the settings on your camera and you're picking up dust. But there are some that just cannot be explained. And that's the ones he's talking about, that if you've hit everything with the lemon pledge beforehand, you may not be dealing with dust orbs. Well, Donnie, do you have any final thoughts on today's show?
No, I missed the beginning of it. I'm glad I caught up, and I appreciate Kent and Al and Andrea and Donnie. He was pretty nice, but thank you guys so much for everything. And all I can say right now is, man, you guys keep on keeping on, and I'm hungry.
Me too.
All right, Andrea, can you top that?
I don't think I can. But I deal more with the historical side. I really do believe that every house has a history. Everybody has a story. No one wants to be forgotten. When we talk to people about what we do with our research, ghost stories always come into it. We've learned that almost everybody has a good ghost story and they want an opportunity to share it. But if you're going in and investigating, I agree with what everybody else said. Don't scare the owners. Right. It may be something very passive, or something that can be explained away. And you want to reassure them.
Right.
But that's all I have to offer.
Well, think about this. When you finish the investigation, just remember a few items. To shrive, remember we talked about that last time, to borrow that term again, shrive yourself in whatever way you feel comfortable. You don't want to take anything home with you. We talked about this when Kent was on before. Some people say the Lord's Prayer. Some people do different things. You're in there to help them, not to take their problems. So, in helping them, you want to, you can only help if you're in a position to help. But leave the location better than you found it. In other words, don't leave a mess. With the clients, like Al was talking about earlier, don't make it worse for them. But with the location, don't leave a mess. Pick up after yourself. Clean up. And with local authorities. So make sure you have permission. Kent mentioned this earlier. Make sure you have permission to be there so that when you leave, you can come back. We were in a cemetery down south of here, about an hour south of here. And the person who had set up the investigation, it wasn't me, I was just on the team. The person who set it up did not get permission. And so right in the middle of our investigation, in the middle of the night, we have the sheriff's called on us, and cops out there with lights flashing and calling us all in and checking our IDs and seeing what's going on. He said, next time, call ahead and get permission. So keep things better. Keep things on keep things on the up and up. But review your collected evidence as soon as possible while everything is still fresh. I mean, if you set that pictures and everything aside and come back to it a month later, it's dead. You're going to have to start all over again, especially if you're in like Al's situation where you're helping a client. They brought you in for a reason, and you need to respond to it as quickly and as efficiently as possibly for them. Don't sit on what you have. I mean, you may not have anything, but if there is that little grain there that you find, it may be what they need. And as always, the only true and irrefutable evidence of the paranormal is personal experience. You know what you saw, and no one can refute or debunk that. So, that being said, nothing beats personal experience. If you want to get out and investigate, just go do it. You can investigate your own home. You can go to a public park. You can go to a cemetery. You don't have to, have a degree in parapsychology. You don't have to have a certificate from ghost hunters. And I know they offer that. They put their interns through a year's worth of training, which I think is totally ridiculous. If somebody wants to get out and investigate, just go investigate. If there's a different parallel universe out there, then it's open to everybody. You don't have to be an expert. We just put these shows together to help you guys and give you a little bit of confidence to go out and do it. You're not going to do it wrong. Okay. And, this is something in Al's case where they're actually trying to help people. And that's an aspect of it. But sometimes you guys just want the goosebumps on the back of your neck, and that's fine. But there's nothing stopping you, nothing holding you back if you want to investigate the paranormal. You just got to go do it. Now, if you do want some help and some pointers, some tips or techniques, listen to Kent's show. Kent's got one called Ghost Hunting 101 on his podcast. That's his very first podcast. Go check it out. If you got any questions, I know you can contact Al at PSEI. They have a Facebook page. Just go do a search, Paranormal Spirit Encounter Investigations, and you can find them. Or you can contact us here at Strange Journeys, our website, strangejourneys.live, our group, Strange Friends. So, without any further ado, we're going to close this show with this. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you all for being here. See you next time when we will be talking finally about black-eyed kids on the next Strange Journeys. Bye.